The stunt coordinator wasn't the one who almost died on this set. Neither was the pyrotechnics guy. It was the director. Francis Ford Coppola, the man who made The Godfather Part 2, The Conversation, 3 of the most celebrated American films ever shot, called his wife from the Philippine jungle in 1977 and said one sentence that would have ended any other career. "I want to die." He wasn't being dramatic. He was $30 million in debt. His lead actor had just suffered a heart attack on a dirt road at 2 a.m. His most expensive star had arrived overweight, drunk, and without reading a single page of the script. And a typhoon had leveled every set they'd built. The film was Apocalypse Now. And before it became one of the greatest war films in cinema history, it almost destroyed every person who touched it. Coppola didn't choose the Philippines because it looked like Vietnam. He chose it because Ferdinand Marcos, the country's president, agreed to lend him real military helicopters, real gunships, and real soldiers, as long as the government could recall them at any time to fight actual communist insurgents 10 miles from the set. That was the deal. Real war hardware for a fake war movie, on a battlefield that was still active. The original plan was a 14-week shoot on a $12 million budget. United Artists had penciled in an April 1977 release date. Everyone involved believed this would be smooth. Coppola had told his sound designer Walter Murch, while still wrapping Godfather Part 2, that Apocalypse Now would practically run itself. Murch remembered those words later. Everyone did. The first problem arrived before a single frame of usable footage was shot. Harvey Keitel, cast as Captain Willard, started filming in March 1976. 2 weeks in, Coppola reviewed the dailies and knew something was wrong. Keitel's energy was too aggressive, too confrontational for a character who was supposed to be hollowed out, burned through. Coppola fired him. Not quietly, there was a contract dispute. Rumors about scheduling conflicts with Brando's availability, whispers on set about creative differences. But the truth was simpler. Coppola watched the footage and saw the wrong man. He called Martin Sheen. Sheen was in Rome, finishing another picture. His agent told him to fly to Los Angeles immediately. When Sheen landed, he had 15 minutes with Coppola before the director's plane left for Manila. Coppola ran through the story at the gate. Barely enough time for Sheen to absorb it. The next day, Sheen got the call. The part was his. He hadn't read the script. He said yes anyway. Sheen arrived in the Philippines and immediately understood this wasn't a normal production. The jungle was suffocating. The crew lived in basic quarters surrounded by poverty. Pigs running through the streets, children with no shoes. Coppola was already rewriting the screenplay every night, sometimes handing new pages to actors at dawn. John Milius's original script had gone through 10 drafts, over 1,000 pages of material, and Coppola was still unsatisfied. He was building the plane while flying it. Then, on his 36th birthday, August 3, 1976, Martin Sheen filmed the scene that would define both the movie and the chaos behind it. The opening hotel room breakdown. Sheen was genuinely intoxicated. He'd been drinking all day. Coppola told him to go to the mirror and look at himself. Then he told him to scare himself. Sheen, barely able to stand, lurched toward the glass and punched it with his bare hand. Real glass. Real blood. It ran down his arm, across his chest, onto the floor. The crew froze. Eleanor Coppola, Francis's wife, who was documenting the production, described the room as electrically charged. Anyone could have been attacked. But Sheen begged them to keep rolling. He smeared blood on his face and kept going. Coppola's instinct was to cut, to call the nurse. But Sheen's eyes told him something else. The actor was wrestling with demons that had nothing to do with the script, and the camera was the only witness he wanted. 2 months later, Typhoon Olga made landfall in the Philippines and tore through the production like a scene from the movie itself. The massive sets Coppola's team had constructed in the jungle, entire villages, temple compounds, military installations, were ripped apart. The production shut down. 3 months of reconstruction followed. $2 million added to the budget overnight. Crew members were stranded in hotels. Some lost their homes. When the rain finally stopped, nobody wanted to go back. The headlines appeared almost immediately. Apocalypse when? And Apocalypse forever. Hollywood columnists were circling. United Artists executives were making phone calls. On day 34 of the resumed shoot, the Philippine military recalled their helicopters mid-scene. The pilots, who had been flying in a meticulously choreographed attack sequence scored to Wagner, simply broke formation and flew south to engage rebel forces. Coppola stood on the ground watching $200,000 worth of footage fly away in real time. This happened not once, but repeatedly throughout the production. The helicopters were weapons first, props second. Every time they vanished, the shooting schedule collapsed and had to be rebuilt from scratch. The assistant directors started keeping two plans, one for days with helicopters, one for days without. Nobody knew which version they'd wake up to. And then there was the money. Coppola had financed the film himself after every major studio refused to back it. He'd put up $30 million of his own money, including his house, his vineyard, and his production company, American Zoetrope, as collateral to Chase Bank. The interest rate started at 7%. By the time production ended, it had climbed to 29%. If Apocalypse Now failed, Coppola would lose everything. Not his reputation. Not his creative standing. Everything. The house where his children slept, the winery that bore his family name, the studio he built with his own hands. Here's what nobody outside the production knew at the time. Eleanor Coppola wasn't just documenting the shoot with a 16mm camera. She was recording her husband. Private phone calls. Late-night confessions. Moments when Francis thought nobody was listening. On those tapes, which wouldn't surface publicly until the 1991 documentary Hearts of Darkness, you can hear a man coming apart. Not performing despair. Living it. Coppola told Eleanor, in a voice stripped of everything Hollywood teaches you to project, "I tell you from the bottom of my heart that I am making a bad film." And later, "We are all lost. I have no idea where to go with this." He talked about faking an illness to get off the set. He talked about standing on a rain-soaked platform and thinking that if he shifted his weight just slightly, he'd fall 30 feet. He suffered an epileptic seizure on set. He had a full nervous breakdown that took weeks to recover from. And according to multiple accounts, he threatened suicide at least 3 times. But the crisis that nearly killed the film, literally, came on March 5, 1977. Martin Sheen was alone in his cabin in the mountains. His wife Janet had gone to Manila for the weekend. Late that night, Sheen woke up with a burning pain spreading from his inner elbow to his chest. He thought he should quit smoking. Then the pain got worse. By dawn, he could barely stand. He looked in the mirror and didn't recognize himself. His eyes had sunk into his face. He rolled off the bed onto the floor, dressed himself lying on his back, pants, shirt, combat boots, and crawled to the side of the road. He propped himself against a post and waited. A public bus stopped. Someone loaded him in. Sheen forced himself to stay conscious, certain that if he closed his eyes, he wouldn't open them again. A wardrobe van passed and picked him up. At the production office, Dean Tavares, the production designer, looked into the van and started crying. A doctor arrived. Sheen said 3 words. "Get me a priest." The priest came and administered last rites. In a language Sheen couldn't understand. He was 36 years old. Coppola's response, captured on Eleanor's tapes, revealed the impossible calculus of a director whose film had consumed his entire life. He told his team, in a line that would become infamous, that even if Sheen died, he didn't want to hear any bad news until it came directly from him. Not because he didn't care about Sheen. Because he knew that if word reached United Artists, the production would be shut down permanently, and every dollar, every sacrifice, every day in that jungle would be erased. Sheen's condition was reported publicly as heat stroke. The real diagnosis, a massive heart attack and a concurrent nervous breakdown, was hidden from the studio, from the press, from everyone. For 6 weeks, the production limped forward using body doubles and wide shots. Sheen's brother, Joe Estevez, stood in for distant scenes. Nobody talked about it. Sheen eventually came back. But he wasn't the same. His hair had gone gray. His body had lost weight it couldn't afford to lose. And then, into this barely functioning production, Marlon Brando arrived. September 1976. He was being paid $1 million per week. His contract specified weekdays only, nothing past 5:30 p.m. He stepped off the plane in Manila significantly overweight. Accounts vary from 210 to well over 250 pounds, for a character described in the script as lean and jungle-worn. He had not read Heart of Darkness. He had not memorized a single line. For the first 4 days, Brando didn't go to set. He went to Coppola's trailer to talk about whatever came to mind and collect his fee. Coppola shut production down for a full week to sit with Brando on a houseboat, feeding him the entire story from scratch, the script, the source material, the thematic architecture. Brando rejected every version. He didn't want to play the character as written. He wanted to improvise. He wanted to be filmed only in shadow. He refused to be on set at the same time as Dennis Hopper, his co-star, who was arriving each day fueled by substances the crew reportedly supplied to keep him functioning. Coppola, already hemorrhaging money and sanity, gave in. He dressed Brando in black. He lit him from behind. He let the camera roll while Brando improvised for hours, sometimes 18 minutes at a stretch, rambling about evil, about genocide, about the nature of darkness. Out of those hours, Coppola would eventually cut 2 minutes that became the film's devastating final act. And when Brando finished his last improvisation, he stopped, looked at Coppola, and said, "Francis, I've gone as far as I can go. If you need more, get another actor." If stories like this deserve to be remembered, if the human cost of making art matters as much as the art itself, subscribe. Because Hollywood tried to bury this one for 40 years. What happened after was almost impossible. Coppola spent nearly 2 more years in post-production, editing over 1 million feet of film, roughly 90 times the footage of a standard feature. The first screenings were rough. United Artists was nervous. Coppola himself told interviewers he didn't think the ending worked. He screened a 3-hour work-in-progress cut at the 1979 Cannes Film Festival, the first unfinished film ever shown in competition there, and held his breath. The applause lasted long enough for him to start breathing again. At the press conference afterward, Coppola stood in front of hundreds of journalists who had spent 3 years writing his obituary. He said one sentence that no one in that room would ever forget. "We had access to too much money, too much equipment, and little by little we went insane." Then he said something else, quieter, almost to himself. "My film is not about Vietnam. It is Vietnam." Apocalypse Now won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. It earned 8 Academy Award nominations and took home 2 Oscars, for Vittorio Storaro's cinematography and Walter Murch's revolutionary sound design. It made back every dollar Coppola had risked and secured its place as one of the defining works of American cinema. But years later, when a journalist asked Martin Sheen's wife, Janet, about the night her husband nearly died in the Philippine mountains, the heart attack, the crawl to the road, the last rites in a language he couldn't understand, she gave the simplest answer anyone ever offered about Apocalypse Now. She had leaned down to Sheen's ear in that Manila hospital bed and whispered, "It's only a movie, babe." It wasn't. But it was exactly what he needed to hear.